Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for another Chelsea news, Chelsea transfer news type of live stream, as we are still in the middle of this god-awful international break. But there are a few things to talk about, as you know, almost every international break, the same kind of rumors start to surface again. But you know, why not talk about them? Because my personal opinion has changed on the main topic of today's stream, of today's video. So, you know, let's see what the other boys think about that. Obviously, we're also in a situation where Antonio Rüdiger missed last night's game for Germany. So is he injured? Will he be fit for Brentford? Who knows? We're going to discuss that. The same with Romelu Lukaku. Muscle fatigue. What does that mean? Is he injured? Is he not? Also, where on earth is Christian Pulisic? But Reece James has returned to full training, as hasn't got a Kante, which are, of course, brilliant news. But we're going to discuss all of those things and lots more, maybe touch on a bit of England. Obviously, Ben Chilwell scoring for England the other day, finally getting some more minutes under his belt, which obviously can only be good for Chelsea as well. But yeah, we're joined by three very, very, very special guests. Let me go from in the order they turned up in, and this is not to criticize them, this is just because that's how I spoke to them in order today. So first was my American friend, Mr. Clutch. Mr. Clutch is a weird name, isn't it? But I'm gonna call you Mr. Clutch now. So Mr. Clutch, first of all, thank you for joining us. And how you doing, mate?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty good. A little bored on this international break. I don't really watch the US play very much because it's disappointing most of the time. But doing pretty good. Just waiting for Chelsea to come back.
Fair dues, aren't we all, mate? Aren't we all? And Jem, of course, host of GNA TV, as you can see on screen as well. Check out his link down in the description. First of all, thank you for joining me and joining us, I suppose. But yeah, how are you doing? How are you holding up with the international break? You just told us you don't really watch England that much. And you didn't see the game the other day. So, you know, how are you keeping yourself busy?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me back again. Yeah, thanks for having me here and that. But no, to be honest, it's been a bit boring, isn't it? Not much to talk about. And when you're a content creator, it's hard to actually think of stuff to talk about, isn't it? So yeah,
it really is. It really is sometimes. Yeah, exactly. And Con, of course, my good friend Con. I'm not gonna share the surname I have you saved on my phone with the whole of the internet. You know, it's already enough that some of Twitter knows. But I appreciate you for joining us, of course, as always. And how are you doing? International break, bored, or you finding things to keep yourself busy?
Just quickly on that, I saw that today, Laurenz. What I was saved under, right? And the freaky thing is my friends like a month ago started calling me that name.
No, but you tweeted that like a few weeks ago or a few months ago. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what I'm doing
on the private account. On the private account, and I took the piss. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call you that as well now. But so I would never forget this name. I had to save it, otherwise I'd forget by the next day.
Of course, your memory is on top. Yeah, that's international break's been boring. I haven't watched one game. Not gonna lie. I watched the highlights of the Germany game because Kai scored. I watched the highlights of England because Chile scored. Other than that, yeah, just waiting for Chelsea to come back as per usual.
Fair dues. To be fair, I have actually had a few games on in the background, but it's like, you know, one of those, you put them on TV, but you're doing other things on your phone and your computer, whatever, that type of thing. So it's like I haven't really paid full attention. Although Austria are getting battered tonight, so that's going to be fun by Denmark because we have 10 players out injured or not joined the squad, which is fantastic. But yeah, no, to be fair, last night, Timo Werner scored 2 very good goals. Kai Havertz scored a goal. So, you know, small positives. You have to take them, especially after Timo Werner after the first game during the international break. Even in Germany, got a lot of criticism, which I'm like, brilliant. So now he scores for us, goes to Germany, and they ruin him. So now all his confidence is gone again. So thankfully, he managed to get 2 goals yesterday and hopefully, you know, push that confidence back up. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, in the chat, appreciate you all for tuning in. Big ups to yourselves. Big up Master Yoda, of course, as always. Big up the Blue Lounge, Brian, of course, as well. If you're new here, please be sure to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers, and every new subscriber counts. So get subscribed if you haven't already. Smash that like button. Doesn't cost you any money. Barely cost you any time, and helps me out as well. So why don't you go do that? Of course, if you want to support the channel, use the super chat function. You can. Don't have to, but it's always massively appreciated, and you know, helps us, you know, get the conversations going in maybe other directions if you would fancy that. But why don't we start? You know what? Before we get into the Hazard topic, let's talk about the injury situations a bit. Why don't we start with that today? Because what is this Lukaku situation? Like, what is this? So he left the Belgian national team due to muscle fatigue. But didn't they already speak about muscle fatigue for Lukaku in their last international break when he said, yeah, you know, he needs to have a scan the next day, but then he came and played every game for us since then. I'm pretty sure he played every game. Maybe he, you know, set out one, but pretty much played every game. And now, obviously, he played the Nations League semi-final, which they unfortunately lost due to Lukaku being called offside quite narrowly. And then Benzema scoring on the other end. No, Theo Hernandez scoring on the other end, my bad. But then he pulled out. But did he pull out because the game is irrelevant? Because no one in the world understands why there needed to be a Nations League third place playoff game. Like, what is the point in that? We didn't even have to for the bloody Euros. Why do we have it for Nations League? I don't understand. Or did he pull out because he's genuinely injured? Like, I'm a little bit confused. Jem, what do you make of the whole Lukaku situation?
It doesn't surprise me that he has the word muscle fatigue. You've got to bear in mind he's played a lot of games, and even playing in this Super Cup of Nations, there was some. I watched the games. They were actually one of the only games I actually watched. They were quite intense, back and forwards, and he didn't get taken off. I don't think he got taken off. I don't think he played the last game, did he? I think
no. He travelled home before that second game.
Yeah, exactly. So to be honest, the word muscle fatigue doesn't specifically mean that he's injured. It just means that he probably needs a bit more time to recover because he's had such a busy schedule. We have to bear that in mind. I don't think it's him actually picking up an injury. So maybe Chelsea have got in their ear a bit as well. Maybe they've just said, like, look, if he's tired, let him go. Or he's just said, look, it's a pointless game. There's no need for me to be here. Just allow me to rest up a bit. It's been a bit of a busy schedule. But this is the problem that we're going to have with Romelu Lukaku going through the season, because he will be playing, I think, at least 80% of our games this season. And
then you add the Belgium games to that.
Exactly. Throw them in as well. Will that be a problem down the line for us? It might be. You might see that he keeps getting muscle fatigue and he needs to rest for 2 weeks because he's been overplayed and stuff. I hope that's not the case. Don't get me wrong, because they get paid enough and they're fit enough to play the game. But at the same time, they are only human beings. Do you know what I mean as well? So I don't know, man. I think it's more of a he just needs to be ready for the weekend. Needs a rest sort of thing. That's why it's coming.
That is fair. The question is just obviously. You're right. He's not injured yet. Otherwise, they wouldn't have called it a muscle fatigue. Otherwise, they would have called it an injury. But obviously, what we don't know as of yet, unless Con and Clutch have some magical inside information that I don't know about, the question is, will he have enough rest by the time we play Brentford to play Brentford? Or does he need to rest a bit more to make sure his muscle doesn't get injured? So on that note, Con, first of all, what do you think? But do you know any more than that? Or is it just a case of we have to hope he's fit for Brentford?
I kind of agree with Jem what you're saying there. It's like the word fatigue, when I use it's not injured, it's fatigue, and someone like Lukaku who's built, he's going to suffer with that. And,
True.
We've all been there. Like, all of us have done something crazy one day. Like, we've done for a mad run or we've done a really mad workout. Next day, we feel horrible, Our muscles are aching. That's probably what Lukaku's going through. Like Jem said, he's played a lot of games. He's done a lot of running, I think he will be back for Brentford. Bench, worst case, most probably, because otherwise they would have used the word injured. So I think he'll be fine.
Fair. Clutch, anything you want to add to that, or shall we move on to Big Rüdiger?
I agree with both of them, so we can move on.
Fair dues. The situation with Rüdiger is arguably even more weird, because I feel like it was maybe Saturday or not Sunday, because I think Germany played last Friday. He played, was decent. I can't remember what the score was in that game, but they won the game. And then on Saturday, I think, or Sunday, he missed training. Then Hansi Flick, obviously the Germany manager, said, yeah, he missed training yesterday, but he's fine now and he's back in training. But then he missed yesterday's game due to apparently a back problem, and he wasn't even in the squad. So now I have no idea what the situation is. Is he fully injured? Was that just precautionary? Again, we have no idea. I hate international breaks. Stop letting them play for people that don't pay them, and then us who pay them have to suffer from the injuries they pick up with them. Pisses me right off. But, Clutch, did you hear anything about the Rüdiger situation, or... Is it again a case of we just don't know anything at this moment in time?
All I heard was that he had back problems, so it could be anywhere from back spasms, which take a week or two to go away, and back spasms are one of the worst things you can have in your back, and that's what it sounds like. But I mean, not being a doctor and only having the back problems, I wouldn't know. I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal because he's still got 4 days, so we'll see coming Friday, but. It is kind of mysterious. I do hate international breaks for that reason alone. That you go, especially now when you're going in and playing 3 games for a team in the span of 2 weeks, and then you have to go back home and play another game. That's 4 games in 2 weeks. You're gonna hurt these players. And who was talking about it yesterday? Somebody was talking about it yesterday. Where he was talking about it's just you're gonna get people hurt, and these players don't need to be doing that many games, and I hate international breaks like that.
Yeah, no, it's honestly true. And people know, very few, if any, Chelsea fans still like Thibaut Courtois. We all think of him as a dirty snake, but that interview was a good interview. And to be honest, props to him that he's a footballer with a name as big as, his is, obviously playing for Real Madrid, being one of the best goalkeepers in the world, as much as we maybe don't want to admit it. For his name to say that live on air about basically criticizing UEFA and FIFA straight to their faces, saying all they're doing is trying to pocket money, because you've got to remember, the players barely earn any money playing international football compared to what they earn in club football. So, you can't even say, yeah, but they also earn money from it. The only people really earning money from these games are UEFA and FIFA. That's the only people that make big money from these games. The fact that with, the Rona, we changed it to having 3 games per international break is outrageous. Sure, not this international break. There was a few teams that had 2 and a few teams that had 3, but still, it's ridiculous. Are you mental? The fact that players join up back with their clubs at less than 48 hours before their next game is ridiculous. These people pay them. How are you only allowing them back less than 48 hours before a game? That's not enough preparation time. It's crazy. And then even more crazy is that people that play on different continents, like Thiago Silva, there's no chance he could ever be involved against Brentford, because the last game that Brazil played this international break is local time, England, already on Thursday morning. It's Thursday morning after midnight is when he plays the last game. So by the time that's done, I don't know how quickly he's going to fly back. He only gets to England on Friday or Saturday. It's honestly stupendous. And like I said, fair play to Courtois. And Arsene Wenger, I mean, as much as I didn't, it was funny to take the piss out of him. How, I thought of him as a rather intelligent man. How on earth has he come up with the idea of playing a World Cup every 2 years? Are you stupid? What is that? World Cup, what? Sure, we all love to see the World Cup, but we already have the Euros the 2 other years anyway, and the Copa America anyway. Surely every 3 years we can have 1 year off, which is the only thing we have anyway. Only every 3 years is there a year with no international football in the summer. So honestly mental to me. If any of you want to add anything to that, obviously go. But in terms of Rüdiger, it's a problem if he's not fit, isn't he? Because who is then the left centre-back? Because we've rotated the other centre-back positions. But if Thiago is not here, because of obviously playing for Brazil, and then Rüdiger is injured, who plays?
No, yeah, definitely a problem. The left centre back. It always seems like that's Rudiger, isn't it? And I think Suma played there, didn't he, last season? Yeah. So with him gone, who plays there? I don't know. Maybe Christensen, so I could think of.
Christensen, Chalobah, maybe.
Yeah, and with the it's so the news about Rudiger is just so what we meant to take from that. There's no time frame. They're just back problems. That could be really bad or barely anything. It's just so fake. So that don't help. And just the point on the international break, it's so pointless, man. Why did Timo and Kai have to play against North Macedonia? Full due respect. Why do they?
I mean, for Timo, it's probably good. Get some confidence in, but
Germany have such a stacked squad, right? Why can't they just play some other players against the North Macedonia? It's ridiculous, these international breaks, and nobody wants to watch them. Genuinely, Euros, World Cups is a bit different. I'm not really one who gets all the hype of those. I love club football. And
to be fair, you said that even during the Euros, so you can't. Yeah, he's not even bullshitting.
Yeah. So, but nobody wants to watch these crap international breaks, and especially in England, around we're gonna get a really crazy schedule soon, and it's just taking all the momentum out of the season as well. We gained some momentum with Chelsea, then there was an international break. We ended on a good win, and then another international break. It's really annoying. And why Thiago Silva doesn't come back till the day of we play Brentford is absolutely a joke. Like you say, we pay him. So how are they allowed the authority? Because remember last time what they said? Oh, we're going to get them fined so they can't play for 2 games. Shut up, Brazilian FA, man. Who are you? None of your business,
exactly that. And it's
stupid.
And there's another international as well going into November, I think, if I'm right in saying.
You can't be serious.
There's another one. It's continuous international.
I think it's once a month for the next 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I don't. All it does is cause issues for. Look at Rafael Varane for an example. He's out now, and how long is he going to be out? It's been confirmed that it's going to be a couple of weeks. That could potentially be a month. Rudiger, we don't know. Back injury can be anything. I agree with Con. It doesn't really answer anything. Lukaku's got muscle fatigue. It's affecting football clubs. It's affecting the clubs. Do you know what I mean? And I get that they have to be played to a degree. Yeah, for the Euros, for the World Cups. I'm cool with that. But when you start seeing friendlies, stupid, pointless 2-week friendlies that come in play, which are just pointless. There's no need for it because they're already playing for their clubs anyway. It's not like they need the fitness. The fitness is there anyway. They're continuously playing football. Do you know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense. I just don't get. I don't get how they've scheduled in the national football, to be honest, whatsoever.
Spot on, though. Spot on.
No, that is exactly it. It's just weird. Like, I mean, especially in obviously autumn, every year we have an international break in September, we have an international break in October, and we have an international break in November. Then we have none from November till March, and then March is the only one that actually interferes with the season in spring, and then we have the one straight after the season. But even the one straight after the season, I swear that hasn't always been a thing. I swear they've only really started to do it over the last 3 or 4 years. Like, obviously, if there was a summer tournament on, they always met up straight after the season, of course. But now there's these games in June, regardless of whether there's a summer tournament or not. Like, it's just stop overdoing it. Like, no one really cares anyway. And I've had this conversation with people on Twitter a few times, and they just say, well, it depends on what country you're from. Some people love the international break because they're really into their countries. And fair enough. But, I'm not from a big country like England. I'm from Austria, and I still don't care. So, so we have two different variations. I mean, I still watch it, but it's not like I watch it and care. It's more like I watch it and I'm like, we're so shit. like what? We played Faroe Bloody Islands and we only just about scraped the 2-0 and should have been about 4-0 down at halftime. It was 4-1 then, mind you. But still, it was ridiculous. Faroe Bloody Islands. I mean, what is that? It's ridiculous. Pissing me right off. Do you know what I mean? Pissing me right off. And yeah, the international breaks. Although I will say to Con, because he said obviously momentum and stuff, there's a small positive that obviously we had a couple of injuries just before the break now. And it gave us a little bit of time to bring those players back without missing games for Chelsea. Like obviously Kante had the Rona and he's back now. Reece James is back now. Let's see. Even if Pulisic isn't straight back now, it still meant less games for him to miss for us because there was an international break. So I guess small positives. But if then, okay, Lukaku, let's presume he's not.
Yeah,
injured,
I was just going to say
Rudiger
that.
is now out injured. That it's like one out, one in. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really help that much. But I think let's move on to the main topic of today. As it happens quite often during the year, even last year, obviously, or the last 2 years when he first went to Real Madrid, there's always been these rumors circulating that Hazard wants to return and Chelsea want to bring him back and Abramovich wants him. And I will say, because we were doing a stream the other day on Saturday, I think it was, with Euro Expert, and he was, we were kind of tactically analysing Chelsea a little bit, and he was bringing up stats from this season in comparison to the past few seasons, and how. And I'm not saying, we miss Hazard. Obviously, we miss Hazard, but it's like we haven't even gotten close to replacing Hazard. And I'm like, the problem that we have is not because we don't have Hazard. The problem is we try to replace a 28-year-old or 29-year-old, what he was at the time, with a bunch of 20-year-olds. Well, obviously, that's not going to work, is it? So, and seeing that and thinking about it, I'm like, well, would I rather have Hakim Ziyech or Ross Barkley on the bench than Hazard? I'm like, if you think about it that way, to me, it's kind of starting to become a no-brainer. I'm like, sure, he's injured all the time. I get that. But Pulisic's injured all the time. So what's the difference? Like, you might as well have Hazard, who, when he's fit, is, in my opinion, still a bit better than Pulisic is now. Because I'll put it to you guys in a second. Whenever I have seen Hazard play this season, he's not looked like he did with us, obviously. But he looked better than when I saw him play last season. He looked a bit more like normal Hazard, a bit more like, okay, movement. He, had this lovely back heel assist for Benzema early in the season. There was a few good things that he had going on. I'm like, fair play. And I'm like, obviously the big stipulation for this for me would be he has to be cheap. Like, even if it's anywhere near close to this rumored fee of like 45 million, get in the bin. Like, you can't charge 45 million after you wanted to get rid of him just up for laughing with Zuma and whoever else he laughed with after that semi-final. So you can't be doing that. But if he's cheap enough, or a loan with an option to buy or something, I'm like, why not? Because when I see our team, and I'll put the floor to you guys in a second, when I see our team and I'm like, the thing that we're really missing is experience. And we just don't have it. Sure, we brought Lukaku in, which helps that. And I saw a stat yesterday by The Athletic, and I'm not sure if you guys saw it. It was a stat of how many passes Lukaku played to certain teammates and how many passes he received from said certain teammates. Kovacic was highest. Mason Mount was second highest in those lists for both passes to and passes received. But now I'll tell you a stat, and your eyes will literally fall out of your skulls if you haven't seen this. Kai Havertz hasn't completed a single pass to Romelu Lukaku this season. I'm not sure if he's not attempted any or if he's just not completed any. The stat was just like Lukaku has not received a single ball from Kai Havertz this season. I'm not sure if this was just Premier League or if this was all competitions, but in this stat that the Athletic showed, the Athletic isn't just someone, right? Not a single pass. I'm like, well, when I see that, I'm like, just give me Hazard, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying, obviously, I don't mean this with like full conviction. I'm not saying, oh, Hazard will be the savior to all our problems. Not by any means. I'm well aware of this. And go back 2 months ago, I'm like, stop trying to get Hazard back. Literally, I literally did a 180. I'm like, I was so against even the idea of bringing Hazard back. And now when I see our problems, I'm like, even if just every now and again bringing a Hazard off the bench would be such a big difference. And it's just interesting to talk about, I think, because, you know, the longer he stays at Madrid, the longer he keeps being injured, the cheaper and easier it will be to bring it back if we wanted to. So, you know, it's the fact that he obviously came off in that game against Italy in the Nations League semi-final was, he didn't come off with muscle fatigue, by the way. Some people tried to tell me that on Twitter. No. Did you see? They had a counter-attack and he had to stop because his hammy pulled up. So, no, he has not got muscle fatigue. He's got a pulled hamstring. He's out for a few weeks. Again, which is obviously unfortunate for him. I do feel bad for him. But obviously, because I can't see Cons and Clutch's, you know, faces, I haven't really seen their reaction to the things I've said. But Jem has been sat there shaking his head. So I'm going to put it to you, question. Why are you shaking your head so profusely, shall we say? And like I said, I was completely seemingly in your camp until a few days ago. And I just look at it now. I'm like, if I have Hakim Ziyech on the bench and Ross Barkley on the bench, we might as well have Hazard on the bench.
The Eden Hazard thing's a bit of a touchy topic for me. I don't really have any player agendas. I've always been club first and whatever. Yeah. But when it comes to Eden Hazard, it's I don't know. It doesn't. The problem I have with it is that I have too many good memories of him in his prime. And now I've seen him become the player that he's come at Real Madrid. Yes, he's not the same. Yes, he's carrying weight. Yes, he keeps getting injured. I don't think it really solves anything, him coming back to Chelsea. And it's not that. Look, I would love to see him at Chelsea. Don't get me wrong, I would, because he is one of my favourite Chelsea players of all time. But in the current state that he is at the moment, I think we've done one of them things where we've sold him, we've made our money, and we should just look for better, because we already have a Christian Pulisic that continuously gets injured, is continuously not available. I've been watching Eden Hazard on and off when he has been playing, whether it's at Real Madrid or whether it's for Belgium, continuously keeps picking up injuries. Doesn't look like he's carrying. He just can't shift anymore. He doesn't have that burst that he had before, you know. And it's not. It might be more of a thing of that. I don't want to ruin the great memories I have in my head of him, because if he comes to here, there will be a lot of rivals, a lot of people that will be putting a lot of expectation on him to be like, you know, step up to what he did before, I think. And I just don't think that him coming back to Chelsea actually solves anything for us moving forward, because I honestly think he's not really in a good football state of mind position. Even the way he looks, stuff like that, to come back and play for this football club. And yeah, he could come back and work on that and, you know, and whatever else. But I don't think he'll ever get back to what he was prior to what he was at Chelsea before he left. And I just think it's one of them ones where we sold him at the right time. He obviously wasn't, you know, he didn't take off at Real Madrid. He keeps continuously picking up injuries. Why have another winger? All right, Ziyech is a ghost in games and he can be a headache. I get that. But why have another winger like Pulisic that could potentially just be not available when we could maybe go and look elsewhere and bring someone in, maybe with a little bit of experience, a little bit older than the other guys, to come in and maybe play that role? When
you say that, name one, because I was trying to think of one yesterday and I couldn't think of a single one.
I would say, and I'm not comparing them both, because then this is not, you know, this is not what it's about. But you could probably throw Adama Traore in there and he could do something, I think.
But I mean, I don't know how old he is, but even if he is a bit older, his experience stops at the level of Wolves. That's basically relevant. That's like Ziyech having experience from the Eredivisie. That basically is irrelevant to us.
Yeah, but he has Premier League experience. He knows this league. You know, that's the only thing I would say. You wouldn't have. And he doesn't. Does he ever get injured? I don't think he does. Look at the physicality of the guy. He's just a beast, isn't he? Like,
well, I know he got injured once. He got his shoulder injured. That's why he's now uses baby oil, so people can't grab on his arms anymore.
I think that just to finish off with the Hazard thing, I just don't see it being a good thing, him coming back to Chelsea whatsoever. Maybe it's more of an emotional thing for me when I think about it more than anything. But I just think he needs to just do his thing, and if he wants to go somewhere else, you know, America, whatever, later on, then do that. That's why I see it.
No, I get that. Like I said, until a few days ago, to be honest, I was in pretty much the same camp, in all honesty. But it's just like it started to shift a little bit for me. So on that note, Con, how do you see it? I'm pretty sure we've spoken about it before, but I can't lie, I can't really remember what you said about it. But maybe for you, it's been a similar situation where what we've seen this season and the small issues that we have had in those forward areas, especially when you see Hazard and Lukaku link up, even in that game against Italy until Hazard got injured. That is better link up with Lukaku than we've seen of our players all season long. So, how do you see it, Con?
I ain't gonna lie, I'd take Eden back all day, every day. I love him. And I know it's like sentiment. People say don't get caught up in sentiment. But at the end of the day, he's still a good player. He's still a good player. I know he suffers with injuries, but I'm sure if he comes back to Chelsea, I'm not saying it's going to stop, but I'm sure it could improve. He can't get any worse, that's for sure. And people look at him and it's like, for some reason, they think the ability's not there anymore. It is. Like, if you watch Eden when he's fit and he's playing, you can see the ability's still there. You can see it. It's just that his body don't allow him to do the crazy stuff he did at Chelsea, which is fair. So I'll take him at Chelsea and just play him in more of a role where he's maybe just a little bit deeper, like where he doesn't have to do so much, put so much on his body, because he's very creative, Eden is, and his IQ is up there with most people's. I think people forget how good of a passer Eden is and his IQ of the game. Like, they see this, like, beat 2 or 3 players and it's like, wow. But he's really intelligent, and I think Tuchel could do a job with him. If there's any manager in the world who could do a job with Eden Hazard, that Eden Hazard we see right now is Thomas Tuchel.
Are we buying him to solve an issue, though? That's what I'm trying to understand here.
Creativity, bro. We don't have creativity.
Yeah, but are we buying him to solve an issue? Because if we're doing that, then we're putting pressure on him. That's what I'm trying to get at. And this is why I don't think that's a good idea. That's why I don't think it's a good idea.
But the thing is, with Eden Hazard, bro, he still demands that respect of defenders, He might be this injury-prone Eden Hazard, but when he's on the ball, 2 people will go to him every time because he's Eden Hazard. He has that. And that opens up spaces for Chelsea, Yeah. And, like, of course, there's going to be pressure to an extent, but it's not going to be the pressure he has at Madrid, and it's not going to be the pressure he had at Chelsea before going to Madrid, It's a lot less because, for one, Chelsea have a lot of other players. We have Kai Havertz, we have Mason Mount, we have Lukaku. Like, there's so many other attackers, And Real Madrid, obviously, like, their fans are the most unbearable in any football team. You have one bad game, they're on your neck. So the pressure, I think he needs to come home, man. He needs to come home because it's not just the club; it's London. His family love London. He said that multiple times. His family would be settled again. He'll be relaxed. He'll be happy. And happy mind, positive things happen. So I'll take the risk. What's 40 million to Chelsea? Let's be honest. What is 40 million to Chelsea? It's nothing.
I mean, to be honest, even I wouldn't buy him at 40 million because I think.
But bro, what is it to Chelsea? Where's the risk in that? We got so much.
I get that. It's just like
so much money.
His past 2 seasons is not worth
it. Get like 10 games out of him.
If there's any player in the world you take a risk on like that, it's Eden Hazard. Personally, but
for us, for no other club.
Yeah,
but for us,
of course, for Chelsea.
I do see a mix of between kind of what both of you said, because I definitely agree with what Con said. He does automatically get that respect from the opposition. But I think the problem would be if he demands too much respect within the squad. Because if we would bring him back, he would have to know that unless he gets back to proper fitness, he is not a starter. And he has to be told that, because as much as he's great, he's also not that great. He's not been that great. Like, he hasn't scored this season. How many goals did he score last season? What, 2? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I know goals isn't everything, but still, like, it's still a part of it. So if he were to come here, he can't come in and demand to be like this regular and basically demand to be the Hazard he was before.
Sorry, I don't mean to butt in. Our wingers are, for the most part, they're quite awful, None of them deserve to start, See, if
I agree. He would come in and get a chance, but then if he didn't take his chance, he wouldn't, like, just because of his name, still play anyway.
I think there's more of an issue, though. I think there's a bit more of an issue here with it, and it's more from in the way that we play system, because Eden Hazard's not running up and down that pitch, chasing balls up and down and pressuring high. He's going to want to, walk around the pitch and he's not got the energy. He's just not got the fitness for me to get around and running around. Like you see, he picks up hamstrings very easily as well. Like, I think the system might not allow him to become what he was. Maybe I don't say what he was at Chelsea, but to see the best out of Eden Hazard. I don't think that this system might work with an Eden Hazard playing behind a Lukaku, because we are going to demand him to drop back. We are going to demand him to defend. Tuchel's going to want all them things. He likes people with energy. Has Eden Hazard got the energy to do that in a Tuchel system?
No, he doesn't have it to do it every week. That's the whole point. So if we were to sign him, he would start 1 out of 4 games roughly and come on in 2 of the remaining 3, if that makes sense. And 1 of the 4 he won't be involved at all.
Can I make a point to what Jem just said, Laurenz?
Go on.
You say that, but Lukaku has the second worst presses for a forward in the league after Ronaldo. I know, but still, if you compare that to Havertz or Werner from last season, it's still a lot less. So I'm pretty sure Tuchel can make an allowance. He can make an allowance.
Imagine adding Hazard to Lukaku. Then we'd be even worse.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
We don't have to play Lukaku every game, though. That's the thing. Because Kai Havertz suffers when he's not playing in that central role where Lukaku is, you know? So options
open. Does it affect the system, though, Con? That's what I'm saying. Does it then affect the system that you've got 2 people on the pitch that are maybe not running around and
but
system?
bro, you say that we got players. Ziyech is affected by the system. He gets hindered by it. We've got Kai Havertz who's hindered by it. You know, we have Mason Mount to a part who's hindered by it. You know, so bringing another player like with the system we're playing, it's very hard to find a player and be like, that's a perfect player.
Yeah,
I think for the similar money for the 40 mil I mentioned, the only player I would go over Eden Hazard would be Bernardo Silva from Man City. I think that makes perfect sense for an outside forward like that 10 role on the right. He'd be perfect, absolutely perfect. But other than that, Eden Hazard, you know.
And Bernardo Silva in that role, I know we've spoken about this with your expert the other day, but I just want to show you 3, and then I'll put Clutch on this as well, just because you guys might not have seen it. If any of you guys watching were here already on Saturday, I do apologize for showing the same thing, but it's going to be a different discussion because different people, so don't worry. Let me just get that up. And there you see that. I'm not. If you want a full screen, basically what you're looking at now, boys. When it does, then you can see the names at the bottom. The number 1 name on the 18-19 season is Eden Hazard with charges into the box, carries into the box. And now look at the numbers since then, and look at who had the numbers since then. In the next season, it was Willian who had the most after Hazard left. Last season, it was Timo Werner, who now doesn't start all the time anymore. Obviously, this season you can't compare it because this isn't like per game. This is like over the full season, so you can't really take this season's stats as complete comparison. But still, this is how much we've not replaced him. Like, we haven't had a penalty this season. Mostly, in my opinion, because Pulisic is injured. But we don't even have anyone to try and run into the box. Like, how, you know, when we can't break an opponent down, even like Juve, when you can't break an opponent down, how do you help that problem? Well, sometimes you need a pen. Big teams sometimes get pens to help them, you know, like Liverpool against us. They probably wouldn't have found a way to score. They had the chances, but they bottled them. What did they need to actually score? A pen. We don't get pens. And why is that? Because none of our players even attempt to run into the box.
We bought Christian Pulisic to do that. This is
but
the problem.
He's injured.
Let's be serious. He was bought to Chelsea not to be the new Eden Hazard. Let's just get it right. He was never get bought in to be the new Eden Hazard, because being the new Eden Hazard for me is just impossible. He was just too good. But Christian Pulisic was bought to be direct, to drive in the box, to win, win penalties, to win tackles, to drag defenders or midfielders with him, to make space for people to run into. The reason he hasn't done that is because we haven't been able to get him consistently in the blimmin' team. So Christian Pulisic for me is an issue. But then you think to yourself, how many other players outside of that can do what they do? How many people can play that? Because Jack Grealish can do it quite well, and he was available. But I think spending 100 million is ridiculous. But I don't think there's
Hazard wouldn't cost 100 million at least.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, how many can do what Eden Hazard does or Christian Pulisic does in football? That's
very few. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying. And I also said this to Alex when he brought this up, and I put it to you after that, Clutch. Obviously, our system has also changed. Under Maurizio Sarri, the system was very different in that 18-19 season compared to now. Every player would have had more carries into the box under Sarri. Also, our current players would have more carries into the box at the time than we do now. First of all, football has developed a little bit. We've become better, meaning automatically every opponent sits deeper against us, making running into the box with the ball more difficult. But still, we also lost Eden Hazard, which is a big thing. And on that point, Clutch, first of all, please share what you think about the whole Hazard thing. But then also on that note, when you see these numbers here.
Well, let's start with a joke, right?
Well,
if we go get Hazard, we're going to have Christian and Hazard, and we'll at least get a full season out of two different wingers.
Which is kind of what I'm thinking.
But, I mean, it's kind of why I'm so frustrated with like him getting injured all the time. It's like he's supposed to be this player that Eden was. Not to the level Eden was, because Eden Hazard has been my favorite Chelsea player of all time. But you have this kid who should be doing all these things, and he's consistently injured. Even like he's second on that list, and he was injured half of that season for the 1920. If he wasn't injured, we'd be talking about him probably being player of the season. But the thing is, it's like my thing with Eden Hazard is if you want to get him, that's fine. But there are certain like things that you have to consider. How much is he going to cost? What is his role? What is because if I bring him back, I'm bringing him back so the players like Christian, like Cho, can learn under him. So they start to get a little bit more of an understanding of like how he views the game, how the top Premier League winger of all time does it. The thing is, it's like the creativity we do have players who are creative. They're just not playing in positions that allow them to be that creative. Christian's creative. He's always injured. Hakim Ziyech, very creative. Very stagnant when he plays. Very selfish. Kai Havertz just seems like he's lost when he's not playing in that central role. And then you got Mason Mount, who I think is playing too high, but is a very creative player. So we have like all these things that come into this mesh where it leads us to like now we're wanting to go get Eden Hazard, who's missed 60 games in the last 2 seasons, which is more than Christian has in his whole career. But Christian's on track to beat him very easily. But for me, I don't think it's a bad thing getting him, but there has to be limitations. 40 million, I would say way too much. 30 million, sure. I'll go for 30 million.
Also depends on what currency we're talking. 40 million euros, more okay. 4 million pounds, no.
Yeah, and I would consider him for what he could bring to the younger generation, because we have a lot of younger players that honestly can be stars, but we also have a team that's way too bloated. We have so many players that we don't even know if they're going to be here next season. Timo Werner's a question mark. Ziyech, Cho, Pulisic. I mean, we know we're going to keep Mason, we know we're going to keep Kai, and we know we're going to keep Rom. But after that, who do we know that's going to stay? We don't. And that's where like this season is so vital for all of them to step up. And it's why it's so frustrating when like players like Ziyech just look like they don't care when they show up, or Pulisic, who's always injured, who fits with Rom perfectly. He's probably the best player to fit with Rom in this team, but he's always injured, and it's where it's frustrating. It's like I would consider Eden Hazard because of all of that, just to make sure that we have somebody else, like you said,
or Hazard, that
yeah,
type of thing.
Yeah, and it's like,
which shouldn't be the situation, but it's easier and cheaper to bring Hazard to have one of Pulisic and Hazard than it is to sign, for example, Jack Grealish. In terms of, it would be easier to just get Hazard. It's much easier to get than get a superstar that fixes that problem completely, if that makes sense. We have a super chat here from Mr. Palitos, mate. Appreciate it a lot, saying people complain that Romelu Lukaku is a counter-attacker and doesn't fit our possession game. Now they'll complain that Eden Hazard is a possession player who can't press. Shaking my head. I see what you're saying. And Hazard's lack of press and Hazard's lack of fitness. And, you can joke about it, and he's not as overweight this season as he was when he first joined them, sure. But, I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard John Terry, whoever else, talk about Eden Hazard. The guy didn't even do his bloody laces up in training. That's how much he didn't care for training. So, obviously, at some point, things were going to catch up with his body. Sure, Mourinho said this years ago. The referees don't protect him. At some point, there will be no Eden Hazard because he'll just be too injured type thing, which is partly also true. But I think more so is that he didn't take care of his body as well as other players did, hence why he's deteriorating much sooner than other players are. Compare that to Ronaldo. I mean, Ronaldo's 36 and looks like a bloody statue, and a better statue than his real statue. Do you know what I mean? So the lack of press would still be a bit of a problem, but that's why I'd only bring Hazard back not to start, but to start every now and again, and to be a useful player. And on that note, I will bring this other graphic up on screen just so we can actually properly look at it. Let me just open it here. So for the passes received and passes made to Lukaku, basically. You can see that now. Mateo Kovacic, while he's had a great start to the season and even had direct assists to Lukaku, for example, obviously that Villa goal, the fact that our centre mid, one of our 2 sixes, is by far, by the way, highest on this list compared to our 10s. And third is our half right centre back, half right wing back, is a big problem. Like, it's a big problem. And like I said, Kai Havertz has not, like, Lukaku hasn't received a single pass by Kai Havertz. Like, I can't even put it into words how much of a problem that is. Con, you were starting to say something there. Go on.
Oh, no, I was just laughing at what you're saying. I'm just trying to get a closer look at those. I just can't believe. Big up Mendy, you know. People talk about his distribution, but 12 passes to Lukaku, mate. Look at that.
I think that's more to do with the way we play, though, as well. Because if you look at where our creative element of our team is, it's always play through our wing backs. This is why we struggle against Man City, right? Because Man City pressed us so high that our wing backs ended up going back into a 5 rather than it being a 3-5-2, and we couldn't create.
But Mount is still second.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's because, let's be serious, Mason Mount, he's like, for me, N'Golo Kante, he's everywhere. He's around the pitch, you know what I mean? He's the biggest work, he has the biggest work ethic.
Sure, but what I'm saying is he still manages to feed balls into Lukaku. Kai Havertz isn't.
Yeah, and
in the same position.
Partly the reason why I think that is with Kai Havertz is because and this is why I always say about maybe Timo Werner playing as well, is that they like playing closer to Lukaku. Doesn't mean specifically that, because to link with Lukaku sometimes, I think you have to do it from a deeper role. He likes to hold the ball up. So he's waiting for a pass to come in for them runners to make runs off him. And I don't think Havertz and Werner will do that as much because they're always looking to make the runs off of Lukaku rather than link, which can be an issue. Maybe they do need to work on maybe linking up with him better. But for me, part of the issue is the way we just play. We always look to play through our wings, you know, and create from our wings.
And I think that's the whole problem with our creativity. It's not the fact that, well, Mount, etc., Mount, Ziyech, Pulli, Havertz, all of them need to step up. But the main problem is our wing backs are just not good enough going forward. That's the main issue. Why do you think Cho is forced that right wing back? Because he's a creative winger who Tuchel's trying to force. You know, we need creative wing backs, and we don't have that. Not getting Hakimi and losing Livramento, it killed us. We should have got Adama when we had the chance. We really should have.
I disagree still.
Bro, like, I disagreed, but I've seen Adama this season, and he's been fantastic. Do you see what he did to United? Oh my God, that was a performance and a half. And he would have drove forward. That's the more important thing. Just having someone who's just running at people.
Run with it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And as much as we love Reece, as much as we love
right wing back against United, though.
No,
exactly.
It doesn't really matter. He played right wing back for Wolves.
It does. That's what everyone tells me about Hudson-Odoi. That's why he can't play right wing back, because it's such a big difference when he plays.
Bro, he played right wing back for Middlesbrough as well. He was good there.
No, I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying against United he didn't. That's what I'm saying.
I think we just need James and Chilwell to play. I think they're our most balanced right.
I think we need one more who's more creative, because I think Reece would be better suited in the back three.
Yeah, I agree. But if we just stop mucking around and playing Alonso and Aspie there and people that we know that can't really create that much, then it might actually tick a little bit better. You know, play players in their positions is what I'm saying, if they're available. But that's another.
I don't know, but if you look at like Chilwell and Reece and you compare him to like a Hakimi, you know. The levels and like night and day sort of thing. That's why I feel like we really needed. I think that's why, you know, we saw the Athletic and there was like Chelsea really want a right wing back, and we was like, what for? We've got Reece, etc. But I think we're starting to see now like we need maybe a more creative wing back. You know,
there's not many though, Con, is there? When you think about
that's
it,
the problem.
Hakimi, and then who else is there that can do what Hakimi does?
Yeah, well, Hakimi's. That's
Trent?
why Chelsea. Yeah, probably Trent would be great in our system, but unfortunately, don't think that's ever going to happen.
It would be interesting. Would Trent be that great of a right wing back?
Maybe.
I think so.
I think he'd be all right, yeah.
No, because what I'm saying is I think Reece James is significantly better at right back than he's a right wing back, because it offers him better angles for crossing, because he's in a different position than when he is as a wing back, hence why his crossing numbers have gone down so drastically since Lampard left, because we changed the system. Even when he played most of the time, he barely crosses the ball anymore. Sure, it's because of the structural change, and obviously because we had Timo up front at times, then you cross a little bit less. But even at that point, play a low cross. Doesn't stop you from crossing, but just play a different cross instead. You can still cross. Don't just pass back all the time, which I think I wouldn't be surprised if it were a similar problem with Trent. And that's like, I feel like there's a bit of a reason why Southgate doesnn't use Trent as much in England team. A right wing back, because they don't play back four.
Let's not get into why Southgate does what he does, because there's a lot of things this guy does that we don't understand.
Let's say why Steve Holland doesn't. No, you're right. It's a fair point. When I saw this, I think it was the other day, I was just scrolling randomly through the Chelsea Reddit and I saw this. I'm like, I love you, Kai, but that is unacceptable. Like even Timo, and Timo has barely played this season. Yeah. Even he played 3 passes to Lukaku. and Kai Havertz hasn't played a single one. Like, that's mental. Like, Kai really needs to sort that out. Like,
Can we
that's
shout out
ridiculous.
Kovacic though? Jesus, look at that.
Yeah, that's
My man's
impressive.
Yeah, no, very true. Very, very true. But I try to bring it back to you, Clutch, because first of all, I want your reaction if you have any to the stats. Obviously, we can see on screen. But again, bringing it back to the Hazard conversation, when I see that and I'm like, and I see Lukaku and Hazard play together, I don't care about the system. That's when you get into the final third, system becomes less relevant. When you get into the final third, when you have top players, you just let them do their thing. But our players aren't doing their thing. Like, yes, we're top of the league, but we still have problems. And everyone pretending that we don't is just lying to themselves. And just look at what Hazard and Lukaku have done together for Belgium. Like, it would be, I'm not saying he wouldn't play every game, but we also don't struggle every game. And in those games that we do struggle, we can't just chuck Hazard on after 55, 60 minutes and help fix the problem in said game. And I'm like I said, I'd rather have him on the bench than I would Hakim Ziyech or Ross Barkley. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm coming from. Sure, if we had all great players, I wouldn't think about Eden Hazard, bringing him back. But I'm like, we don't have a Eden Hazard type player. The players we have on the bench are kind of useless anyway, so might as well put him on the bench instead. But Clutch, what do you make of the stats, and then also, like, in general, just round it off a little bit more?
Wasn't it everybody saying that Kovacic couldn't pass, and then we get this little graphic? That's lovely.
Let's go.
Well, it doesn't say how many of these passes were like chance-creating passes. They might have been simple passes, but yeah.
But this is what we were missing with Timo. Timo needs that. That's what makes Timo great, is a midfield that passes over to him. That's what Timo does. But we didn't have that, and I don't understand that. And that's but yes, I agree. Like, if you wouldn't have Eden Hazard on the bench rather than Barkley or Ziyech this season, then I would 100% agree. I mean, Hazard doesn't look like he's going to get you're not going to get more than 45, 30 minutes out of him. Like, that just seems like his max cap these days.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I think part of why he's injured so much is because Real Madrid have paid so much money for him, so that whenever he's back fit, they play him immediately. And I think that's part of the reason why he's always... And if we get him, we wouldn't... Like, sure, we'd rely on him more than we would admit, probably. But we would get him knowing that we can't rely on him, so he wouldn't be forced in straight when he's back from an injury. So I think that's why he'd automatically be less injured for us.
Oh, sorry, just to I don't want to take over here, but do you remember with Kante and Lampard? When Kante used to come back and Frank used to throw him in straight away and then he'd get injured again. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. And then what happens? Frank stopped doing that and less injured, so it's just to back your point up.
No, 100%. Clutch, gone. Anything else you want to add?
I lost it. No, but I think the thing is, it's like, you're going to get 30 minutes out of Hazard, which is fantastic. Because if it's not going to be that exact same Eden Hazard, but you're going to get something similar at least. But I think when it comes to, like, nostalgia, yes, I think Jem is right in that regard. Like, this could hurt his legacy with Chelsea. He comes back and he does what he's doing at Real Madrid. We're going to think of Eden Hazard as a different player at that point. We're going to think it's going to be like when we did it with Drogba. But, I mean, I'm like 50-50. My thing is, it's like Roman, the comments or the things we're saying that Roman wants him to come back and thinks he's going to be the best player again. That's just, I don't think that's going to happen. That Eden Hazard is gone. I also
don't think, like, how would anyone know this? Like, we've known Roman Abramovich as our owner for so long now. How often do you hear things about Roman and they're actually true? Like, who's close enough to Roman that Roman said, yeah, I wish we could bring Hazard back. Be great, be our best player again. Like, who do you think who's that close to Roman that would have the balls to share this with the media? Like, clearly there's a completely made up story. We might be interested in him, but not because Roman Abramovich thinks a certain thing. No one in the world would know about this. Like, otherwise we'd know so much more about him than we do.
I think that's a fair point. For me, it's just, what role is he going to play? Mm-hmm. And he's not going to be a starter. I'm sorry. We got young kids that have so much potential. And if you come back and bring Eden Hazard back just to start, just to be this player that he used to be, those kids' confidences are gone. Like, you're just going to ruin it. Like, for me, even who Eden Hazard is, if you bring him back and then you give him the number 10, you might as well you sell Christian at that time, because he's going to be pointless. He's going to, every confidence that he's ever going to have is going to be gone. Because
I mean, I said it all
can I
the
just
time.
make a
We
point
should
to
have
that,
given
bro?
Ruben the
Sure.
10 for the whole time.
Just a point to that. Like, I think a lot of people thought that when we signed Kai, but what happened to Mason? Like, he didn't just relish it. Like, he got better. Like, he got considerable amount better. Like with Pulisic, he's not one to get down. He likes people shutting up and doubting him. Like when they doubt him, he likes shutting them up. So I think healthy competition. You know, if you don't want to be in competition at Chelsea, I think you need to go somewhere else. Personally,
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Like I think Eden being there will be enough of a push for him. Because I mean, his whole life he was told as an American he's never going to be playing in Europe, and here he is, and that's one of the stories he loves to tell. But he also tells the story about what the number 10 means to him, and because it's not just because it's it's the number that the best player gets. For him,
Does
it's a
anyone
lot
else
more
find
than
that
that.
weird, by the way?
What?
That the number means so much to him. I find that very odd.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, especially like in America, right? Like if you know anything about football/soccer, like from an American standpoint, those numbers mean a lot to some people. Like if you were to go play like American football, like the number 18 is synonymous to Peyton Manning, Steve Young, I think Joe Montana. But those are like big names. So you get like the number 10. So what do you think with the number 10? You think of Messi, you think of Rooney, you think of Beckham, think of Ronaldinho, or you think of the number 7, which is Ronaldo, and all that.
Not Beckham, but yeah, the other ones,
Yeah.
I see the small difference here, and I get that that's maybe partly because of he's American. The problem is an American football season is about 12 games long. Our football season is about 60 games long. So, like, you know.
I think the issue with Christian Pulisic is not Christian Pulisic on the pitch. It's just that we don't get to see enough of him, and that is an issue because if we've got this player that's supposedly meant to be so direct and in many ways unlock defenses, especially when we're playing against low block teams, and he's not available and he consistently isn't available, we need to start thinking elsewhere because we do need that. We massively need that. But I just don't think Eden Hazard is that answer. Like letting Christian Pulisic go because Eden Hazard comes back, for example. Do you know what I mean? I just still don't think that works. You know. But I just think we're in square one again if we do that, because again, like we said, he could be out for months again if he is overplayed by Tuchel because we've brought him back to be this guy that needs to make it tick properly. And I don't know. I just think there's a lot.
I agree with that. It's like I said, obviously there would be stipulations. It couldn't be too expensive. Everyone would need to be aware that he doesn't come in to start every week. That's him, that's Tuchel, that's the board. Everyone needs to be aware, and the fans. Everyone needs to be aware of this if we were to sign him. But just before we get to this other, graph or stats board or whatever you want to call it, that Alex, brought the other day, which I want to get into, which is just another sign of problems in my opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe and smash the like button for me. Why don't you? Doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time. And boys, probably, again, to read the names, probably best if you full screen it. But again, compared to the start of from the 2018-19 season, which is obviously Maurizio Sarri's season up to now, passes/crosses into the box. Eden Hazard, clear number 1 with over 100. Second, Cesar Azpilicueta, and that in that season from right back. Willian, Jorginho, who's the next? N'Golo Kante, Pedro, Alonso. Makes sense. Season after, already you see the problem with Hazard was gone. Who was it? Aspi. Willian, and then Reece James. By the way, all 3 of those coming from the right, which again is a problem in itself. And then, the full set Lampard season, plus obviously Tuchel added to that. Reece James, Mason Mount, Hudson-Odoi, interestingly, then Christian Pulisic, Hakim Ziyech, Ben Chilwell. But also, can you see how we had less, Alex told me he only used players that had at least 5. Compare it to the Sarri season where we had way more. We also have less players that even get to 5, let alone do we have one that gets as high as Hazard. Again, obviously, it's not per game, it's for the full season, so you can't compare the last part, the 2021-22 thing completely. But not only do we not have anyone to run into the box, we don't even have anyone to pass into the box properly, because we don't cross enough, in my opinion, now, which is super weird, because even under Lampard, there was one time where we just stopped crossing. First, we only crossed, and then from one day to another, we stopped, and we haven't really come back into it under Tuchel. But that's what, and I'm not even saying Hazard is the solution to it all, but players like Kai Havertz, I love the guy, absolutely love him. but you need to do a bit more with your talent than you are at the moment. Like I saw an interview the other day by him, and he said something like he never really had to think much about football. He always just went with his instinct because he was just so talented type thing. I'm like, okay, that is all well and good. You were clearly more talented than everybody else. And also you played for a team like Bayer Leverkusen. Now you play for a team like Chelsea, which everyone defends deeply against, not like Bayer Leverkusen. Now you need to start thinking more about football and not just do what you think, or not just your instinct, because your instinct hasn't really done that much other than a few occasions. So please start thinking about it a little bit and use your abilities, because I'm not trying to sit here criticizing Kai Havertz for a lack of ability. Not by any means. The opposite, which is why I'm sounding maybe critical, because he's so talented. I'm like, do something with that talent. Do you know what I mean? Like when Ross Barkley is bad, I'm like, I'm annoyed that the manager plays him. Not annoyed that he's bad, because he's just bad. What is he going to do about that? Do you know what I mean? It's like when people have a go at Jorginho for being slow. I'm like, you can't have a go at him for that. It's not his fault, is it? Like, what is he going to do about it? If you have a problem with that, have a go at the manager for playing a slow player, right? If you're going to have a go at anyone. But with Kai Havertz, he's so talented that it makes complete sense that he will play. But he's just not making use of all of his talents. He can run and dribble, pretty much like Kovacic can, in my opinion. Obviously, he's a bit taller, but he could do it. When was the last time you saw Kai Havertz dribble? Like, it doesn't happen. And when he does, he runs into an opponent and loses the ball. Like, it really needs to improve things. Like in the Bundesliga, like people have now started to think that Kai Havertz is basically a striker, and we've just always been led to believe that he's this creative player. That's not true. In the Bundesliga, he had more assists than goals pretty much every season. The only season he started to play as a forward was in his last season before we signed him, because Leverkusen strikers were all injured. That's the only reason why he started playing this false nine striker role. Not before that, when they had strikers injured, he didn't play there. He is creative, but he's not. He has a beautiful left foot. He plays gorgeous passes, but he's not doing it for us at the moment, and he needs to start doing it. But it's not just him. You know, it's easy to say just him. Mount needs to improve at it at times, but he's still the best from the
Ziyech should be doing it. It's his strength, isn't it? Creating. That's what we bought him for. Ziyech, picking up the ball and playing them balls in quickly.
But Ziyech, I don't want to be harsh here, but I'm like, okay, this is why usually you don't buy players from the Eredivisie. That's just now my answer. But there's a reason why he didn't leave the Eredivisie until he was 27.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's a question mark, to be fair.
Like all the other top players that you came from the Eredivisie, they left at 21 or 22, maybe even younger, and then developed abroad. You don't really develop anymore after you're 27, 28 that he is now. I'm not saying he can't do better than he is now. Of course he can. We saw that in Spurs last season. But I think all of us hoped that he would almost be able to take his Eredivisie form to the Premier League, which, now that we think about it, was always a bit silly of us to think, because that's like signing a League One player and expecting him to be as good in League One in the Premier League the next day. It's just different. And I'm not saying the Eredivisie is maybe as bad as League One. Of course it isn't. But look at some of the teams. Like if you open the Eredivisie table, and I guarantee you haven't even heard most of the names of the bottom half of the league. I guarantee it. Sure, if you play FIFA, maybe you have. But aside from on FIFA, you haven't heard of any of them.
This is why this is why I'm saying, because it's not just one or two players that are an issue. It seems like an issue overall that we're having with the players playing behind Lukaku. Is it not a system issue? Like, are they struggling because they just cannot adapt to the system and the way that we're playing? Are we not playing him in the position that... Because when I think of Hakim Ziyech, he's always been a winger, cutting inside on his left foot and whipping balls in. He can't do that anymore. He's having to play...
Remember last year under Lampard when he played there? Didn't everybody tell you he's not a winger?
I'm sure as Ajax, he was playing off the... It was in a front three, but off the wing most of the time. He was inside.
Off the wing, but coming inside, kind of playing exactly the role we are trying to get him to play.
I don't think he is, though, doing that. I don't think we're doing that with him, though.
No, he's not executing it like he was then, but the position is kind of exactly the same thing. Obviously, the whole structure of the team is very different, but the position is the same. He's kind of this inside winger because he doesn't own the right foot, so he was never right by the byline. He was always a bit inside. It's basically what he does now.
No, but he had a lot more of a free roam at Ajax, He was allowed to cut in.
Gives you
bro,
more
you
space.
say you got to stop with this Eredivisie thing, bro. The best striker we've ever seen in England in the last 20 years came from Eredivisie. Well, actually,
no, of course, but not
really.
at that age.
Suarez. Bro, but the thing is, see, I had European lad, some great guy, by the way, from Twitter. I had him on the podcast like a few years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And he told me offers came in for Ziyech, but he promised Ten Hag he'd only leave when it was the right club for him. And the right club for him was Chelsea. So it's not like he didn't leave because nobody wanted him. That's not the case. They did. And you got to remember, this is a guy who got Player of the Year over De Jong. He got it over De Ligt. He got over Van der Beek. So this is not a bum plan. It's not that like we saw him under Frank Lampard. And when he was playing 4-3-3, he got back-to-back man of the matches. So it's not like the Prem's the problem. It's just the system. It's not.
No, I agree. I'm not saying
it's not it.
But I'm saying 3 or 4 games after coming back after debut, Morata had 3 or 4 great games. Does that make him a great player now? Would you want Morata back? No, you wouldn't. Do you know what I mean?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
And I'm not even trying to say, the Eredivisie is just full like garbage. But obviously, because Chelsea are a great team in the Premier League, most opposition defend quite deep and make it really difficult for us to have any sort of space. Well, in the Eredivisie, it's all a bit more open. It's a bit like in the Bundesliga, where there's a bit more space. So it's a bit easier to have that space. So how you say, well, he had more, space to free roam. Well, yeah. But that's because of the league.
Bro. He played in an Ajax team that had possession over every team they played.
So did we, though.
No, exactly. But I'm saying, so he played against teams that mostly sat back against him too. And he had an absolutely fantastic performance against a Juventus side that didn't leave their halfway line. So, he can have them performances. I get what you're saying. Like, I'm a bit biased because I really do like him. So I'm obviously going to be a bit biased. And
you also had a great performance against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, if you remember.
Yeah, he did. He did.
But we weren't defensive, to be fair.
I feel like, I think he's a good player, but now I'm starting to question if it's Chelsea and him. It's just not that fit,
I've given up with him.
Yeah.
I think it's like multiple things when it comes to Ziyech. I think one is his I think he has this ego because when he plays it, he feels very arrogant. Like he takes shots that he knows that. I mean, at least he's taking shots, I guess. But he takes shots that he shouldn't take. And who knows? I mean, the system doesn't fit any of our attackers that well. So it could be just the system. I mean, look at us. Our attackers struggle to score goals. We have more defenders that score more goals right now. Lukaku is the only one who's doing that. So...
Do you know why that is? And I keep saying it is the system. It's because we're losing an attacker because of the system that we're playing. When you see people like Aspie and Alonso, and it's pretty much like having 5 at the back. When you look at who's on the pitch, it's more defenders than there is attackers when you think about it. So where is the creativity coming from?
Wing-backs.
Three up front. So even though we question mark the Havertz and the Ziyech's and whoever else is playing behind, you've got to look at who's behind them, trying to supply them as well. And I know Kovacic is doing it, from what we're seeing more often than whatever. But it's just not when you look at the balance and we're talking about getting the best out of these players. I think another attacker would benefit them, rather than having the extra defender. And we only have the extra defender because we're not overly confident in our own defenders. Let's be serious. So we're kind of trying to cover an issue, which is making another issue, if that makes sense in a way.
I completely agree. That was part of the things. We discussed that in the stream on Saturday, and the problem that. Like both Pice and Euro Expert kind of said in response, I mean, to some extent, that might be true with our technical players, but essentially with how we play, look at how attacking we are. Would it change so much? It would allow us to put an extra attacking player in, sure, but they're all out of form regardless. So would it change that much?
But are they out of form because of the formation?
Yeah.
But they weren't out of form late last season in the same formation. I
mean, look at a player like Christian,
was
right?
Better at the end of last season than he is now, wasn't he? Sure, different. To be fair, Kai played a different position, so maybe for him it's different. But say Hakim Ziyech, he was having productive games under Thomas Tuchel too, but he isn't now.
I just think bringing in Lukaku would have given us an option to switch the formation.
Yeah.
When you look at what we did last season, we played with a false 9. But why it worked so well is because they were alternating so much. They were all running off each other. With Lukaku in the team now, in theory, you might need to tweak it a bit because he won't do that. He will hold his position. I watched him at the City game when we lost. He is very static. He likes holding his position. He won't run around off like Havertz and Werner does just to run into spaces. It's not his game. So do we need to adjust the system a little bit now? We've got a striker that can score goals. Do we need to create more for him? Because we're not creating enough for him at the moment by adding another attacker.
See, this is
the
why I
point.
think we wanted Koundé, because we pushed so hard for Koundé, and everyone was like, why? But he's very competent in the back four, and like you said, Rüdiger, Christensen, everybody looks fantastic in the back three, but when it's a back four, it's different,
Yeah.
Well,
And
Rüdiger looks good in a back four for Germany as well, to be fair, these days.
I remember Rüdiger even under Conte, and I love Rüdiger now. I think he's probably on form the best defender in the league right now. But under that back four, even under Conte, just because he wasn't as obvious as David Luiz, under Conte, just because he wasn't as
like
not
in the
Conte,
first 3 games, you mean?
Sorry. Just because he wasn't as obvious as David Luiz with his mistakes. He did make a lot of mistakes in that back four. And we see how aggressive he is, how much he pushes up. The back three allows him to do that. When it's a back four, he can't do that. And he's going to leave space when he does that, So that's probably why we did want a Koundé. He can play in the back three, he can play a back three, he can play like a back four, So I don't know. With the system, I think Jem makes a great point, like having that extra attacker in games like a Burnley, like a Brentford coming up, where we're going to have a lot of the ball. We're going to need to break them down. Do we really need 2 people sitting? I don't know. I don't think so.
But is the option another center back, or is it a holding DM? Because I think a holding DM does more for that.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
because you're going to have a protection back there, and I know this is like a sensitive topic, but like if you have like a Declan Rice, who that's what he does, is he sits back there, and I'm not advocating for Declan Rice or anything, but I'm just saying a player like him, where he sits back there and he's protecting, or like a Jordan Henderson, who doesn't really move up far up the pitch, where he sits there and he protects both Van Dijk and whoever Van Dijk plays with. Like that's why Liverpool defended so well, is they could push their. I mean, let's be honest. Trent and Robinson are not very good defenders, but they're allowed to push up because Hendy's sitting back there and he's allowing those 3 to he's protecting the back 2. And that's one of the reasons why Liverpool was always so good when they pushed up, is they had that extra protection. We want to push our backs up, but we can't do that because it's going to be Jorginho, and Jorginho's going to get beat pretty much every time.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. Jem needs to head off in just a second, so I'll put it to you. Any kind of last words you want to add there? Because what I was just about to do was get something slightly different on screen, just to quickly finish it off, basically. Because if you ask me, this is currently probably the lineup that I would probably feel most confident in. And I know people will say, Hudson-Odoi, blah, blah, blah. But if we play a 3-5-2 rather than a 3-4-2-1, then I think Hudson-Odoi right wing-back would be much. I know he doesn't really appreciate it, which is part of the problem. I think if he just accepted that right wing-back is, if he finds a place into this team, it will be at right wing-back. If he would just kind of take that on board a bit more, I think he could excel much more than he has done recently. But in terms of players on form, I think this is way more helpful than any than any of this. Because that just hasn't worked. And how many games have you played this season? Not just in the league, all games. When other than against Arsenal, there was no game where I'm like, this worked.
Why that works, just quickly, why that would work if we set up like that is if we only played Callum Hudson-Odoi. Because offensively, he will give you more going forward. So in theory, you have Hudson-Odoi and Mount, Werner and Lukaku are your proposed attackers. And then the others, all right, Kovacic can play their balls and whatever else. But it looks more balanced, I think. I mean, Reece James is the easy answer because he can do both going forwards and backwards. But against Brentford, I think that there's going to be a lot of space because they will press. And I don't think we need to have that extra defender in that, providing that we break the press well with whoever's playing. So having that extra, like Cho on the wing, for example, that can dribble with the ball and drive, because you've got to think, we haven't got many dribblers on the pitch right now, will help, I think, massively. So I would go with Callum Hudson-Odoi.
There's a last question I put to you before you head off. In my opinion, the reason we play a back 3 isn't necessarily to be more defensively stable, but to make it easier for ourselves to build our play up, to give us an extra option where we have the ball with less pressure to build deeper. I think that's the main reason why we play a 3, not necessarily partly for defensive reasons, of course, but I think the bigger reason is that it helps us build in structure. But the problem is once we get to the final third, our players on current form are struggling to really exploit that, because even against Juve or City, if we just did things right, we could have created many more bigger chances for ourselves than we did. So yes, the system is limiting us a little bit, but I still think that the players should do more in the system.
Yeah, No, I agree massively, especially when we get to the final third. But I think having Mason Mount with Kovacic and Jorginho would work because he will pick the ball deep up. And the one thing that we've missed, without Mason Mount, especially in the Juventus and the Man City game, is that he will play that ball direct. We haven't got enough players that want to do that very quickly. And with Werner and Lukaku, they'll make, Werner will definitely make runs and Lukaku, will play off him and whatever else. So I think it looks more balanced, is what I'm saying. I think that works 100%. I think it does work. I think it's I think the other thing as well we need to do as well is the chemistry side of things. I think we need to try and stick with something rather than just continuously keep switching the front three. I don't think that's helping Lukaku, Werner, whoever it is that's playing to build up that relationship. So if it's going to be Werner, Lukaku, and Mount based on form, let's just say based on their form at the moment and who then just stick with them and then just allow the others to get in as of when and give them some time to build up a relationship together. Maybe that's another way of working around the system and getting it ticking.
100%. But Jem, I know you need to head off, so I wish you a wonderful evening. Cheers for being
Thanks
here.
for having me, man.
Exactly. Take care, man.
Take care of yourself, guys. See you later on.
Later.
Take care. Bye.
Myself, Con and Clutch, for a couple of more minutes, we'll just discuss a few things that I, brought up there, and obviously if they have anything else to add on what we discussed just a minute ago, because what I just wanted to say here, what I saw and I said this the other day as well, I think what I see for Belgium a lot is that Lukaku doesn't stay here, even though they play a 3-4-3. Like Belgium play basically the same system. But what they often do is Lukaku shifts here, someone pushes here, often De Bruyne, often somebody else, and it kind of creates this. And I'm like, well, that would kind of allow us to use Lukaku in a way that Conte wants, rather than just making him a Giroud, allow him to use his pace a bit. And because not only is he fast, but also is he fast and strong. So you know how name Havertz. He might be faster than a lot of players, but when he's shoulder on shoulder with an opponent, he often has to turn around because otherwise he'd get shoved off the ball. Lukaku will never have to do that, basically. And then you can allow Havertz to be in that position where he thrived the most last season. Just as a I don't know what we would call it, but like an idea, basically. What would you, for example, think of that? But I still think at the moment, current form, 3-5-2, whether you put Havertz and Mount there, Mount on form, but in general, it doesn't really make a difference. I think that's probably most likely. And I hate the idea of playing a 3-5-2. I hate 3-5-2 even more than I hate 3-4-3, and I'm not a fan of that either. But with how Ziyech and Havertz and Pulisic isn't fit, and even Werner struggles, I think, more when he plays that inside role than he does in the front too. I just feel like we need to go for this at the moment. But that screams even more Conte's second season to me. But Con, what do you make of what I have on screen here?
No, I think you're right. I think if you think about it, like Tuchel never did this 3-5-2 last season, and he started to do it this season. I think this is why he wanted the Kunde and he wanted that wing back, So then the guys going forward, we have that width, that we don't really have because Reece James don't really offer it, Asby doesn't, and then Alonso, what's the offer? But I like this, and like you said, for Belgium, when you see Lukaku's goal against France, it's really nice. He came here from where he is now.
Off the right, not in the middle. Yeah, exactly.
And he's great at doing that. People think Lukaku is just this, because he's big, it's like it's a false image. He's not just this big target man. He's quick, he's powerful, He likes, more importantly, he likes doing this kind of stuff, He says he hates playing as a target man. He doesn't like playing like that. He likes running with the ball. He likes taking people on. And then we got Kai Havertz who will relish with that. We got Werner who will relish with that, Like they like having that big person to play off. What you just have to think of Werner, you think of Poulsen, Kai, I can't think so much. But you'd think it would suit him, So I like this setup a lot, but I think you're right. As much as people want to blame the system, it's the players too, because there's been a few performances like Palace last season where we absolutely ripped them apart. Kai Havertz scored one. She almost scored that beauty. It's if these front three can click.
Hudson-Odoi was great at wing back that game.
Yeah. If that front three can click, then this system's beautiful, But that's the problem. These players are just not performing, and why that's happening. It's going to be problems, man. And the players, like you said, they just need to step up. They really do. Because some people, they're on thin ice, yes. If Pulisic can't get fit, he's going to be on thin ice. Hudson-Odoi, he's going to be on thin ice, So, and when you see people like Chiesa doing what they do, and Chelsea got a lot of money, what do you think they're going to think after that Chiesa performance? Oh, Juve are not the team they used to be. They've got this fantastic young winger, well, youngish winger. It's explosive. Why not have a crack, you know? And so they either step up or next season not going to be here. It's as simple as that.
I agree. Clutch, what about you? While you explain your position on this, I will just get something else on this lineup thing on here because that's the last thing I want to discuss today. But Clutch, first of all, what do you think currently of 3-5-2 against 3-4-2-1, and also obviously now I put Havertz and Mount there, but to use it a little bit like this at times. I'm not saying do the whole game like this, but every now and again let Lukaku drift, which in my opinion so far we haven't allowed him to do at all.
I completely agree. I think Lukaku is better as somebody who is allowed the freedom to move where he wants and not sit right in the middle. Sure, he's a big, strong guy and he can do the thing and he can hold up the ball, but you don't have players who are going to play around that. So, I mean, you do, but they're never ready to play and don't have have injury problems. I think Con hit it spot on. Like all these players, they need to step up. This is their season. This season they have to perform. Like as much as I don't like Mason in like the 10 role. Like even like a Pulisic in like the 10 role, I don't maybe because I guess because you have him like if you've seen most of his goals for us have been he's coming from the middle, attacking from the middle. But it's for me it's just like all these players need to step up. Like Con said, they have to step up. Like Ziyech, this is his season. Pulley, he's got to stay fit. If he gets another injury, I don't think he'll be here next season. For me, I would probably want to do more of like the defense, like the 2 8s, and then Jorginho in a solo 6, or Ruben in a solo 6, because I mean I think Mason just flourishes more in an 8 role, and I think Kovacic flourishes more in an 8 role.
I completely agree. What I just put up on screen now is obviously not with the same players, but system-wise, what we did against Southampton for the first time under Thomas Tuchel. Our wing-backs were kind of inverted, and we let our wingers, which usually play here, like, you know, the inside 10s, and we say, you know, like Ziyech, that's not kind of his position. We let them in Werner and Hudson-Odoi that last game be out here and be actual wingers, basically, positionally, and had the wing-backs come in here, obviously in that game to help with the press, which made a lot of sense. So it was mostly opposition dependent. But when I saw that, I'm like, now, if we do that, we can really start to talk about a Hudson-Odoi at left wing back at left wing, because this here, that ain't Hudson-Odoi for me. And it also ain't Pulisic for me, by the way. But this out here and Werner out here, just to send him and let him do the one thing he's really good at, those low crosses back into the box to Lukaku can tap him in. That makes sense. I would like to see that way more than I would like us always doing this, because our wing backs are just not decisive enough to do enough with it here. And these two, whoever plays, doesn't matter who it is, they never make the good enough runs in here to score enough goals. So when we did that last game and we played kind of those weird inverted wing backs, it's almost like we tried to be Sheffield, who had the what do they call it? The overlapping centre backs, which is obviously not what it is, but kind of something weird in inverted wing backs. What a weird thing to call it, right? But it worked for us, and I would like to see us use it more. But do you have any thoughts on that, Con? The way that we used it the other game, obviously it was.
You're spot on, bro. You're spot on, because these players here are better in this area than the fullbacks, you know. So let them be there and let the fullbacks, you know, just hang back a bit, and it worked really well. Werner was a problem that game. Hudson-Odoi should have had an assist, you know. Like Werner scored, Lukaku should have scored. So yeah, I like this a lot. I like this a lot, and inverted, especially this left side. No offense to Chilwell or Alonso, I don't really like him too high up. So I don't think the end product's near good enough. I think Chilwell's good when he's off the ball and that ball comes in and he's at the back post. I think that's where Chilwell's really effective. But the crosses and all that, I'm not the biggest fan. But yeah, I like this a lot. I do like this a lot. And when we had the Loftus and cover here as well, it was really good because we were so progressive for once. You know, it was a bit quicker going forward. So 100%. Yeah, no, I was a fan.
The only problem that this lineup obviously throws up is unless you put Kai instead of Lukaku, you can basically not put Kai or Mount anywhere in this team, because Mount and Kai would not be thriving off being the proper wingers like out here. They would kind of struggle more with that than being the inside ones. So For Mount and Kai, this would not be good. But I think right now, with obviously Mount wasn't fit to start, so maybe it's a different situation if Mason's fit, and the whole 3-4-2-1 or 3-5-2 works better in the first place anyway with Mason. And I firmly believe that. But Clutch, what do you make of this? I mean, you could even though Werner had a good game for Germany the other day and had a good game for us against Southampton, on average, let's see what Timo Werner does going forward now. You could even do it like this. Or, if you want to, give Ziyech that proper wing. If you really, can't handle it any other way, put Havertz there, put Mount there. It doesn't matter, right? I feel like we're missing those players. Like and that's why a lot of people that, whether it's you guys as guests, I'm not saying you two specifically, but people that I have on as guests or my viewers or people on Twitter, they always say Hudson-Odoi's not right wing back. It's not a right wing back. No, he's not. But he's not because he doesn't go there. Because if he went there, which our right wing back should do, and Aspi does it way more than Hudson-Odoi ever does, then he could act like a winger, not a right wing back anymore. Sure, he would.
Lawrence, can I make a point quickly? Sorry, bro. I don't mean to interrupt, but do you know how Cho plays here? Imagine if he played under Mourinho, especially Mourinho in like the 4-2-3-1 or something. Like he would be playing like a right wing back because how much he would have had to defend anyway. So this is kind of no different to what like a Willian sort of role had,
Exactly. I mean, sure, he struggles a bit with not having a good weak foot, but he's only 20, and the more he plays on the right, the more he will automatically have to improve his weak foot. So if anything, long term, it will probably make him a better player the more he has to play on the right, because it will improve his left foot. If he plays on the left, he will never improve his left foot and end up like a right-sided Iron Robin or Gareth Bale or whatever. Obviously, they were both great players, but still they never had a weak foot. So I think there is small positives in Hudson-Odoi improving as a player if he plays on the right. But I know I'm just having Werner there as random, but I'm just saying, Hudson-Odoi right wing back doesn't stop him from getting into these positions. He just chooses not to, which is part of why I criticize him sometimes so much, because I'm like, no, you could be there. You just choose not to, which is what pisses me off so much. But Clutch, anything you want to talk about this or say about this?
I think I've always said that like Cho is one of our better crossers. Like he's one of our better passers. If you think about like when Project Restart versus Liverpool, where we were down 4-1 or whatever, and then him and Pulisic came on, and he was on the right wing, Pulisic was on the left wing, and he got that assist to Pulisic. I was like, these players just aren't being played to their strength or be played to the system, and they're having trouble adapting to the system, right? I think part of the thing is with Cho, it's like, would I like to see him on the left? Sure, but like, where is he going to get in? He's not going to get in and over Werner. He's not going to get in over Pulisic. He's not going to get in and over Mount. So for him to get minutes, I think he needs to just accept this at this point, that like he's going to have to play on that right. And it's not like he can't do it. He's had good performances there. So I don't know why it's like he's having this issue. It's like maybe that's not the position you want to play. But I was told last year when Pulisic was playing on the right, at least he's playing.
He's first of all, at least he's playing. And how many players in history didn't like played in positions that they didn't initially want to be? Robert Lewandowski started his professional career as a right back for the Polish national team. A right back. And look at him now. Like, just because you're playing a position that you're not that big of a fan of for a few months, first of all, fans shouldn't lose their shit so much every time. And also the player, just deal with it. Be thankful that you're playing, because it's literally every kid's dream to do what you're doing right now. So stop moaning which position it is, just play. And I'm not saying he is moaning, I'm saying if he is. But alongside that, just you will improve the more you play it and the more you accept that this is currently your role.
I agree. I mean, currently what we can fit him in as is a right wing back, and it's not like he can't do it. You're probably not going to score the goals that you're going to want to score, but at the same time, you're going to be more dangerous creating those passes that only he can do. Like, yep. I don't want to say that, but I want to say, like, in that attacking area up there where, like, you have Werner right now, he's more dangerous than James. He's just more dangerous because he's going to do something
James
more with that ball.
Has the cross. Callum has the one-on-one.
And I think that is part of Callum's problem, is he just doesn't want to do that role. But it's like, if that's the case, like, you're not going to get in over the other players. I'm sorry, Prime Pulisic is much better than you. Prime Mount is worth more to the team. Prime Werner is going to score more goals than you. Like, that's how it is.
Well, the question is, why I would stipulate that is because we haven't seen Prime Hudson-Odoi yet, so I don't think we know that for sure yet.
That's fair.
But I see what you're saying. I see what, like, on the best we've seen of them so far, I agree. But Con, any last bit you want to add? Because otherwise I would slowly but surely round it out here.
That's to his point now. I think in the manager's eyes, I think that's how he's saying about Joe Dodoi thing. Like, if you're a manager and you've seen Pulisic play, you got Mount, it's like you don't really want to take that gamble on Hudson-Odoi there, you know. You want to play the players you know who can do the job there, you know. That's why you've, over the years at Chelsea, haven't really played massive parts because the managers don't trust them. They want to go with tried and tested Willian or tried and tested Pedro. So I get what you're saying there. And you know what, Laurenz, just to round it off, like, we're saying a lot of these things we could change, but the fact that we're top, we scored the second amount of highest goals and got the joint best goals conceded, least goals conceded, sorry. It shows that even though we've got problems that we can fix, like, we're still half decent. And imagine if we fix these problems, bro. If we fix these problems, oh my God.
Much higher.
Yeah, it's long for the lead. It's long. Because look at United.
No, it's true.
They have problems. Look at them. They're struggling. And look at the run they had. Look at the run we had. We played City and Liverpool in that. Played Arsenal, Tottenham away. I know Arsenal people are like, oh, they're rubbish. But, like, they're still away. You don't want to play them. That's not a game you want early in the season, is it? Like, midway through the season, yeah, but not early. Especially a London derby. You know what they say about derbies? Like, form goes out the window, innit? So, you know what? If we fix these problems, then Tuchel can find that sort of way to play and our attackers, you know, hit form. Long day for the league. Give it to us already. Doesn't matter if you give us... Is it Anthony Taylor who's the referee for us against Brentford?
Again,
Yep. You can give us all the Anthony Taylors if you want. If we find a way to play and our players hit form, Anthony Taylor, mate, you're going to need 10 of them to stop us.
No, exactly. And I will say this just because of what Jem said earlier, potentially, you know, taking a defender out and playing a fullback. The reason why we're top, even though we have these problems, is because our defense is so good that we can survive a bad half, make changes at half time and still win. Villa at home, we should have been 2 or 3-0 down, but our defense and our goalie are great. Spurs first half, we were shocking. In the end, we win both games comfortably. But the performance in the first half shouldn't have allowed us to win that game comfortably. So we still need our defense because our attack isn't producing. And I think we would have similar attacking problems if we added an attacker, but we'd just be worse defensively for it.
Yeah, because the players are still not going to be on form. That's the problem we have, isn't it? Like, we can put the extra attacker there, but if he's taking heavy touches, he's like running into players, what's the point? And we're just going to be more susceptible to conceding a counter attack. So, you know, yeah, you're spot on with that.
No, exactly. Obviously, we haven't, because we've spoken about it in the past, we haven't really discussed Lukaku as much in the problem areas, because I do think Lukaku is part of it. That not only does Kai need to get used to Lukaku also needs to get used to Kai more, in my opinion. And Lukaku needs to be more bouncy, like we discussed that one player rating stream with Pice as well. That, yes, he's not like immobile and completely static all game long. He just drifts from left to right. He does that, but not like, you know, he doesn't hop around to make it easier for players to find him behind players that are trying to block the passing way to him. If you always stand there and just wait, obviously they're going to just block the pass. If you bounce around left, right, but I'm not saying by 15 meters, I'm saying by like 2 or 3, then obviously it's much more easy to find it. And I do still think Lukaku has to improve on that. I do think everyone has to improve. I also think Thomas Tuchel will probably need a little bit more time. Well, maybe he has had it now. He's just trying to implement it now. You know, as much as we scout Lukaku and he knows who Lukaku is, once you have him as your player, it still takes a little bit of time to understand, okay, how do I best use his assets? And it was the easiest for the start, in my opinion, to use him a bit like a Giroud, like a target man. And once the players get used to him, once the manager knows how good is he really at exactly what thing, you can use him more with his other strengths, if that makes sense. But I think we discussed a lot today. I think it was a very interesting stream. I firmly enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you did as well. If you're still here, I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Smash that like button if you want to. You vote in the poll that we have in the chat, which is obviously, would you bring Eden Hazard back to Chelsea? Currently, of 211 votes, we have 64% yes, 36% no. So, you know, if you haven't already, go down below and vote what you think. Obviously, we discussed our points of views, and obviously, let's just hope that both Antonio Rüdiger and Romelu Lukaku are back fit by the time we play Brentford on Saturday, which of course will be, like I said, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Obviously, at least it's not an early kickoff because that would make things even worse. But yeah, we'll be back the latest on Friday with obviously a Brentford preview. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Up the Chels, check out both Con and Clutch on Twitter. Check out Jem on YouTube. His link is down in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Up the Chels, upwards and onwards. And I'll see you next time.